Hello and welcome to the 2017 Actual Tech Media Enterprise Cloud Ecocast event. On today's event, we're excited to be joined by Unitrends, Blue Medora, Cloudistics, and Datrium. My name is David Davis, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. I'm a 9-time VMware V expert. I've been in the industry writing, blogging, speaking now for over 20 years. And previously, I served as an IT manager, server admin, virtualization admin, and that's why I'm really passionate about all things enterprise IT, and especially innovative enterprise IT technologies. And that's why I think this is going to be such a great event today. Now, the great thing about the Cloud Ecocast event is that we at Actual Tech Media created this event so that you, as IT professionals, which I formerly was, can learn about innovative enterprise IT technology quickly and efficiently. You don't have to go out to a conference. You don't have to spend the whole day or a few days doing it. You don't have to even take time off of work. You can do it right from your desk, learn about some really cool technologies all in one place, and do it very rapidly, very efficiently, and get your questions answered all at the same time. We've got some expert presenters lined up for today, so I hope that you will send in all the questions you have. Anything that pops in your mind, send it in. I'll be answering questions. The presenters will be answering questions as well. We want to make this very educational and very interactive as well. So with that, let's go ahead and kick it off. I've got a little bit of housekeeping to talk about before I do a little bit of state of the enterprise cloud presentation and some poll questions, and then we'll kick it off with our first presenter. So some of you might have heard that we have some valuable prizes to give away today. We do indeed. We have 4 Amazon $500 gift cards to give out. We will be drawing those prize winners randomly from those who are live on the event, and we'll be announcing those winners verbally. I'll say the name of the winner and where the state that they're from, and then we'll also announce the prize winners in the Q&A box there on your console. That's the questions box. If you don't see that, you can bring it up from the bottom panel. We'll also announce the prize winners on Twitter as well. And I've got a little bit more prize information coming up here in just a moment. As I mentioned, we want this to be an educational event, so ask all the questions you want. We're going to ask you a few questions, however, in our poll questions that we'll be doing. I have, I believe, 7 poll questions to ask you today. They're quick and easy questions to answer, and so I appreciate your participation in those. I'll be sharing the answers to some of those questions with you so you can see how you compare to others who are on today's event. We'll be talking about the event over on Twitter using the hashtag CloudEcocast. So if you want to tweet about the event, feel free to do it, but use that hashtag. Now, I should point out that you can tweet directly from your console. At the bottom of your screen there, there's a Twitter icon. You can click on that, and the first time you click to tweet, it will authorize you to tweet via your Twitter account. Your credentials are kept just between you and Twitter, and then after that, every time you tweet, it will automatically append the Cloud Ecocast hashtag to make it easier to tweet without having to go over to a separate interface. You can also share this event today with your friends and colleagues using the email icon at the bottom of the console as well. I want to point out that you should try to maximize the presentation window, the slide window, to make it larger. I recommend that you do that right now because when presenters play videos or they do screen shares or they share architectural diagrams, you want to be able to see those as clearly as possible. So try to maximize that window if you can. And also use that questions box there that's on the console. One more thing here is we do have some resource downloads from our presenters. Each presenter has selected a resource that you can download from your console. Those handouts are available for download at any time. They're PDF documents that are related specifically to the presentation that they're making today. Now, I mentioned the gift cards. We have 4 Amazon $500 gift cards to give out. You must be present on the live Ecocast to be eligible for the drawing that we do. Winners have the option to make that valuable donation to a selected charity, which I'll share with you in just a second, a list of charities. And we do have some prize terms and conditions over at our website, actualtechmedia.com/mc-prize-terms-conditions. If you just go to actualtechmedia.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll find a link to the prize terms and conditions there if you enjoy reading the legalese. So selected charities. We love giving money away to charities. These are the charities we selected for our Megacast and Ecocast events. If you win a prize, you want to give the prize money away to charity, we would be glad to help you do that. Now, I said that the event will be discussed over on Twitter using the hashtag CloudEcocast. You can follow me on Twitter. I am David M. Davis. You can also follow Actual Tech Media, who is producing today's event. So before we jump into our first presentation, I've got a little state of cloud in the enterprise from my perspective here to give you. Just a few slides, just kind of my take to set the stage, make sure we're all on the same page, all those good things before we jump into the presentations today. So first, I want to point out that there's many different forms of cloud. I'm actually at Amazon's reInvent conference today out in Las Vegas. They're talking about public clouds. There's all sorts of public cloud services: Amazon, Azure, Microsoft, Google's GCE. All these different cloud services are available, and they come in many different flavors. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, functions as a service, software as a service. We just about all use software as a service in some way, whether it's Gmail or Dropbox, whatever it might be. But then there's many other forms of cloud, and enterprises today are rapidly adopting private cloud solutions to make their lives easier, and then they're adopting hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, or enterprise cloud solutions, whatever you want to call it, basically solutions that leverage the public cloud in some way or connect to the public cloud in some way. And I'm sure just about every enterprise out there is using software as a service. Well, more and more they're using infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and functions as a service, all these new services that are available to leverage. And that's the kind of thing that we'll be talking about on today's event, because the public cloud can help enterprises in so many different ways, whether it's data protection, monitoring, disaster recovery. There's many different ways, and we'll be talking about those on the Enterprise Cloud Ecocast today. So more specifically, how do these types of cloud solutions help the business? Well, tremendous scalability, on demand, especially around the holidays like we are right now, where enterprises or some enterprises might need to burst up their computing power or their analytics or their web infrastructure. Public cloud solutions and even on-premises cloud solutions can help them to be more agile. And these types of solutions are elastic so that they can burst up and then they can shrink back down. Many cloud solutions come in consumption-based models. For example, data protection or backup as a service might be charged just by the amount of storage that you protect, with that solution. And these types of cloud solutions allow you and IT to focus more on your applications, on your business, and they help to make you more agile yourself and more efficient yourself so that you can help the business to be more profitable. Many of the advanced features are built into these cloud solutions, so you don't have to purchase additional software. You don't have to upgrade or buy new different additions to get more features. Everything's in there, kind of just like your iPhone. It's all in there. And then they have the potential to provide a tremendous return on investment, for your company and help you to invest in something that really makes a big difference at your company, helps you to make better business decisions and leverage technology intelligently, and instead of just spending money to keep the lights on in the data center, as you will. So, like I said, there's more to cloud than just the big cloud players. Multi-cloud adoption is strong. Companies need automation. They need greater efficiency for their on-premises data center. And there's numerous other cloud-connected solutions. And even if you do move some workloads to the public cloud, we have to keep in mind that even in the public cloud, it's not all just magic. You have to ensure that you have cloud security solutions in place, data protection, disaster recovery, performance monitoring, capacity planning. All these types of things still need to be put in place in the public cloud. So that's my take on the state of enterprise cloud today. And that's why I'm excited for today's Cloud Ecocast, where we'll be hearing from Unitrends, Blue Medora, Cloudistics, and Datrium. So before we jump into it, I've got 3 quick poll questions for you. you answer these poll questions right in the slide area on your screen. Just click the button that corresponds to you. So the first question here is, how many people work in your company? Should be a quick, easy question to answer. And once you're done answering that, I'll share the results of that poll with you, and you can kind of see, where you fit in with your peers who are on the Cloud Ecocast today. So I'll give you just a few seconds to answer that. All right, hopefully you've had time to answer that. Let me share the results with you. And if we scroll down, you can see 23% have between 100 and 500 employees, and 12% have between 1,000 and 2,500, and 18% have 10,000 plus employees. And then it goes all the way down to 9.9% who have 0 to 25 employees. So we have a wide range of companies represented on the event today. Thank you for answering that. The second poll question is, what is your industry vertical? And this one, you will probably have to scroll down because there's a lot of different verticals out there, as you might be able to guess. So just scroll down and select the vertical that corresponds to your company, and then I'll share the results with you on that poll as well. All right, hopefully you've had time to find your vertical. Let me share the results. And it looks like healthcare, 13%, technology, 31%, manufacturing, 15%, and many other companies are represented as well. All right, one last poll question before we get started with our first presenter, and that is, how large is your IT staff? All right, hopefully you've had time to answer that one. Let's see what the results were. And looks like 33% have more than 100 people. 23% have 2 to 5 people. So all sorts of IT shops represented on the event. So thank you for taking time to answer those polls. I've got a few more polls throughout the event, and I appreciate your help in answering those polls as well. So without further delay, I'm excited to kick off the event today by welcoming Jordan Warsoff, who's a solutions engineer at Unitrends. Jordan, are you there?
I'm here.
Thanks for being on. Tell us about Unitrends and your enterprise cloud solutions.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do so. So it's kind of fun. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff you pointed out earlier about how, what the cloud is doing and why even bothering with the cloud. Something that people often forget when going into the cloud is protecting it. A lot of our business workloads are fragile. If we lose the information, if we lose the data, if they're not working, that's a huge cost to the business in time, in effort, in downtime, in money, whatever it may be. So we need to kind of make sure we're finding ways to address our cloud protection as well as utilize the benefits of the cloud to enable the protection that I might already have locally. And that's what Unitrends tries to do. Basically, with all this cloud and this infrastructure and all these changes, we basically are approaching a less is more world. IT individuals and departments and administrators all are finding that they have less time, less money, less budget really, but with more risk, more work, and more projects. So basically, you got to make more with less without any real consolation either. So you got to find a way to make ends meet while being more and more responsible, more and more pertinent to the business without the commiserate increase in investment. And it's daunting. Data is growing dramatically faster than the admins are starting to work at these places. Businesses are being struck all over by ransomware, and downtime, whether it's due to malicious or nature, costs businesses a lot of money, not just the time. So the public cloud is one great option, but it's not an end-all, be-all. One great example is Delta Airlines uses cloud themselves, but they still had an outage, and it cost them over $150 million for that downtime, that cost to fix, and everything else. So finding some kind of way to make sure that you can limit the downtime and ensure your recoverability is kind of key. And so what is the best way to kind of address that? I kind of joke, but Apple's one actually example. It's kind of going with this all-in-one approach. Cloud tends to be a one-stop shop for many people, but it can't do everything. Apple made the iPhone. It consolidated MP3s, cameras, and a phone and an internet browser all in one box. BlackBerry and Palm were attempting to do it, but no one made it as accessible, easy, and affordable as they did. It just kind of made sense and was able to accomplish everything, and it's now ubiquitous. Same thing kind of goes when you're looking at kind of building out your own private cloud, for example. I know we're talking mostly about hyperscale cloud, but all of this tends to come with moving away from commodity hardware and moving to commodity cloud, being able to use the cloud for as much or as little as you may or may not want to do. So when you're kind of looking at what to do with your cloud and what to do with a solution that's going to enable you to stay recovered and stay online, you've really got to make sure that your protection covers everything you possibly could and will need. So one great example for that is ensuring that you have no finger pointing, less management, that you have a flexible solution that can provide the uptime and confidence you need in your recoverability. And that's what Unitrends tries to do. We're trying to bring you to what I call the next day and age, the new world. Instead of having multiple vendors that's dealing with all this stuff with finger pointing and management overhead, you're constantly setting up, tuning this or that, and little continuity. We want to bring you over to a new world where you have one vendor, one hand to shake. There's less work. You can rack it, connect it, and go. Local and cloud continuity along with a recovery assurance where you can test and automate the recovery process with more security on a purpose-built Linux platform that is a unified and higher customer satisfaction experience. Customer support being one of the big key differentiators. And that's really what we're trying to do. If you were to build out your own cloud, you'd be looking at all sorts of stuff on the column on the left to be able to enact that. Versus with Unitrends, you get one hardware on site and then take care of a cloud using the Unitrends cloud. We have our own public cloud, so you don't even have to worry about your secondary site. You can use us for that, where we're going to scatter the data throughout the four corners of the wind of the country and make sure that you can recover however that means to you. Not to mention, by simplifying your solution, you get a better customer support experience. 98% approval rating with Unitrends, a holistic CSAT, where that's over all time with our support team, versus other competitors may just look at a certain time frames and only give 95% approval ratings. And then if you have multiple vendors, that support is compounded in terms of your experience. So our cloud really tends to be a differentiator. What we try to do is remove third-party clouds, give you DR as a service, test it, give you the retention that you want in our cloud, and don't worry about SLAs or resource management or how much is the license per CPU or per storage. We enable you to do single vendor, no finger pointing. We can spin up Windows machines in our cloud, VMware VMs, Hyper-V VMs. We have a recovery assurance where we can test that authenticity with infinite retention. It has a 1 hour SLA where we can have your entire environment back up and running in less than an hour. Not to mention, we provide WAN optimized replication, and we rely on the good old sneakernet too to get data back. Instead of having to wait to download all of your data over the internet, go ahead and utilize our storage capabilities where we'll see it in an appliance and ship it back to you in a disaster scenario. You can go from having lost 10 terabytes of data on site to having a new appliance in your hands in less than a few days, simply as long as it takes to ship it from our data center after we've seeded it. So a lot of stuff and a lot of capabilities you really have. And we try to make sure that you can test it and be assured in your recoverability. And that's kind of what the recovery assurance piece here can provide. Instead of praying that your backups did perform successfully and scrambling, we can automate the DR testing for you in your cloud, in your local site, whatever you may want or need. And it's available for all sorts of different capabilities. And that kind of leads us into what Unitrends can provide. Our flagship product is the Recovery Series Physical Appliance. Comes in 14 different models ranging in size and resources depending on how much data you're trying to protect locally. Alternatively, if you're trying to back up something in one of the hyperscale clouds or you don't want to get a physical appliance, Unitrends does offer our virtual appliance, the same exact software, functionality, and capabilities you can deploy on Hyper-V, VMware, Zen Server, Azure, or AWS. And then with those, you can then do all the backups with our, which we'll go into in a second. We do also offer Office 365 protection, and we offer a great DR strategy for AWS and Azure as long as you have VMware locally, where we can replicate VMs into Azure AWS without having to have a standing instance. So you're going to have lower resource costs in those hyperscale clouds, replicate the data up. And then once you're ready to fail over, you can use this as a migration or disaster recovery tool, fail over to AWS for a few weeks while you fix your local site, and then you can bring that back, simply boomerang the data back to you so you have all those options, functionalities, and capabilities to recover however you may need. Let's go ahead and see where Unitrends fits. As I mentioned, the physical appliance and the software pretty much have all the exact same capabilities. They're both able to do all the backup, all the recovery, and all the finagling you may want to be able to do. It's simple to deploy. You simply rack stack the physical appliance, give it an IP, and all the management's done from there. Virtual appliance, you simply assign it the number of resources and storage. You can always add, adjust, or change as necessary, and then you're good to go in and start recovering. First things first is you're going to start what you can protect. Unitrends can protect physical servers, virtual servers, NAS devices, or applications. We can utilize agents to back up the files on physical servers, recover bare metal images so you can recover those physical servers should anything go wrong. We've got virtual machine snapshots. We got the native snapshot integration with VMware and Hyper-V, and soon coming out with Nutanix AHV support as well. All of this data is backed up using incremental forever, so we only take one full and then just run incrementals to reduce the load on your production machines. And it is deduplicated and compressed on the appliance for the most efficient use of storage, whether it's using our storage or yours. Once the data is landed, you can then recover individual files from a snapshot. You can recover a whole Windows machine into a virtual environment in less than 5 minutes. You can set up standby replicas. You can set up whole virtual clusters to fail over. All sorts of capabilities are available for your backup and then recovery. Once you're done with that, you've got the backups. They're good to go. You want to do something with those. Keeping them all on one site isn't quite robust. So you can copy it to some kind of local option where you can send it to a NAS, SAN, tape, rotational disk, or we even offer some archiving to cloud such as AWS or Google Cloud or Rackspace. And then once you've got the data on another site, you also have the option to replicate. This is where you're going to build out your own cloud environment. What Unitrends can do is you can go to your own secondary location, whether that's a hosted site, a hyperscale site, or another building. Or you can go to the Unitrends public cloud. You can see over there on the left where we've got this hyperscale cloud where we take care of the backup, the recovery, the replication to us. So you got the backup local, replicating it off-site to us. We're going to keep that data in there as long as you want. We can even do forever retention, and you can easily browse and recover any pieces you may need. On top of that, we have our DR as a service where we can spin up those VMware VMs, Hyper-V machines, or Windows machines in our cloud. And we can even do that with a 1-hour SLA, automatically tested and verified for you down to the application level. No more is getting a login screen enough. Now you can finally see and know how good your protection is going to be. And that's that reliable DR, that recovery assurance that we can provide. Let's go ahead and get started. I figure we can probably show off a few screens of what we've got going on. I'll go ahead and start the streaming. Cool. We should be able to in 1 second. Here you can view the dashboard. This here is our Unitrends interface. This is kind of what you're greeted with if you log in. Not to mention that a bunch of this stuff here on the dashboard is actually going to be sent to you via email. So you'll get an email report every single day, letting you know how the backups, recoveries, anything else you might need to know is going to be available for consumption right here. And all of these will bring you to the different reports that they apply to. So if you have any questions or things you're concerned about, you can easily click through and find out that info and utilize it however you may need. Once you've got your first setup of this, you're going to go to the Configure tab. This is where you get to start the kind of recovery, not the recovery process, but the process of protecting your environment. I can easily add a single server that I want to protect right here and go to adding an asset, or a virtual host is possible to do as well, where I can simply put in how much the criteria, such as the credentials, the username and password, and boom, I've got all the VMs ready to go and ready to start viewing and be recovered. Once I've got them added, I can start creating what we call backup jobs. We have multiple ways to create backup jobs. The first one is a little more involved, but it's still pretty good, where basically you come in, you select the servers you want to protect, and then I set up a schedule for how often I want it to run. This is our default incremental forever. Here I set it up, I'm going to back up once a day at 3 a.m. I can easily adjust this, build out my own schedule, run a single backup, whatever I may need to do. I can easily do that right here. I can also do the same thing with virtual assets, where here I can see my vCenter. I can grab specific VMs or even whole resource pools. And then from there, set up the same thing. Set up a kind of custom schedule if that full is not good enough. I can say maybe run one full, or let's just do incrementals on a weird schedule. So here today's the 29th. So I'm going to do incrementals on a few weird hours. So 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 10, 12, 1. Now I can kind of set this up, save it, and those are my backups. And I actually view and verify that that's when they're going to be running. So here I can see 6 a.m., 9, 12, 2, and 6. Hit save, and that's the schedule I'm going to be able to run and do the backups for. So it's great and easy to be able to maintain, adjust, and utilize and kind of conform to what I want it to do, not be forced to have it tell me how it's going to work. Alternatively, Unitrends offers another way to be able to set up your schedule. It's called an SLA policy. You can click to create the policy, set up an asset. Let's go with Hyper-V this time. Instead, what I can do, I can select off these servers, and I can actually set up this schedule based on RPOs. So I don't want to lose more than 4 hours of data on those. I can set up a backup window to only back up at certain times. Say I do want to copy it and replicate it off-site, keep it for a certain period of time, or not even bother. Hit save, and it's going to build out the schedule for me. I don't have to worry about managing, updating, or maintaining it. It's going to do the work for me, which I'm not going to complain about. It's nice having it easy. So once the jobs are running, we can come here to the Protect tab, view the kind of overall status of how these are doing. I can see green check marks good, yellow exclamations of warning. I can easily view and read any of the issues that may have come up. I can see what warning issues there were, any client messages, things like that are all going to be visible and ready for you to do. This can all then be exported as needed. You can easily then recover individual files if you want to. I can browse through my previous backups and find a single file that I want to recover easily by coming through this. I can even do whole folders or even whole drives if I need to, and set up where I want to recover them, and I'm good to go. Same story said for the virtual machines. I can recover the whole virtual machine using instant recovery, where basically I'm going to send that to a secondary host using storage vMotion or live migration and get it up and running pretty quickly. So that's pretty much most of those pieces. You got the backups, you got the recoveries. Same can be done in the hyperscale cloud, where I can deploy agents within my instances and back them all up, treating them like physical servers, and send it somewhere else. I can easily replicate them. The same story goes for my reports. I can get a bunch of information like my data deduplication. I can see my deduplication rates. As we add data, the deduplication drops, even though my data reduction stays kind of constant. And the same can be said for viewing a high-level protection summary of what's going on. We try to provide as much as possible in terms of information for what you want to be able to do. And the nice thing is we make it really easy to be able to consume, control, and manage. As we kind of mentioned, it's pretty easy to take care of. You deploy easily, protect a bunch of different things, recover them as needed. I can then copy that data to some kind of disk or tape or RxDA, and then I can even replicate offsite or even utilize the Unitrends public cloud, which is priced much more, I would say, efficiently for what you want to do. Based on how much local data it is, we license that and then give you unlimited storage in our cloud. We give you the retention you choose, and then we give you the DR as a service you want, and with premium if you so desire. We even have Office 365 backup capabilities where we're going cloud to cloud. We're going from your local, from one Azure instance to another one, your kind of pick, and then you can easily fail over, recover, fail back, whatever you need to do. You can utilize us to get that right back into the production machine. Super easy with eDiscovery. You can discover individual emails, individual subjects, or even whole attachments. And you can even recover the whole thing as needed. Not to mention we can deploy within Azure, and we're Microsoft Azure certified, where our Boomerang can do those VMware recoveries into Azure, and we can even back up and protect Azure instances. We're available in the marketplace today. That's most of what we've got. The last thing to really show is that we're trying to provide an all-in-one solution. It's basically protect everything you have, we give you the continuity ever you want, with the guaranteed recovery, all within a single intuitive platform that's on a secure Linux environment. And that's really what I've got. Hopefully seeing was believing. And if you like what you saw, feel free to follow us on one of our social media. We've got all sorts of Facebook, Twitter. Even check out our website. If this looks like something you're interested in, we offer a fully featured 30-day trial, both that you can deploy locally or within some kind of hyperscale cloud. If you're messing around with Azure and you want to back up some stuff, use us to check it out. Same goes with AWS. There's all sorts of multitude of other options. So don't be shy. Give us a shout. We're happy to help you out and see if there's anything we can do to make your experience to mess around with the hyperscale cloud better. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over. Maybe we have some Q&A or things I can help address, but I appreciate your time and interest in Unitrends, and hopefully we can help you out with your transition to the cloud, making sure you're protected and able to kind of expand your workloads by making you more efficient and protecting everything you've got.
Great presentation, Jordan, as usual. Yeah, we do have quite a few questions here for you from the audience. So while we do that, I'm going to pop up this poll question and just leave that on the screen. The question is, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Unitrends Cloud Backup Solution? So I'll just leave that up while we do Q&A. If you have a question about Jordan's presentation or anything about Unitrends Cloud Backup, now's the time to answer or ask it. So we do have a lot of questions here. So first one that came in, Jordan, is about dedupe. Is dedupe offered, and is it inline dedupe?
Yep. So we offer inline or post-process deduplication, depending on kind of your priorities with performance or storage. But yes, the deduplication is included, and it is variable block-based, going from I think 1 kilobyte up to 1 megabyte hash block sizes. So yes, we do, be as efficient as possible.
Okay. Another question here is, during a disaster, it sounds like this person maybe works for like an MSP. How do my clients switch to the DR site? Like, is it automated, or like can you kind of walk us through the process if there was a disaster? How would they recover?
Sure. That's actually a great thing, and something I probably should have brought up. It's a phone call. Instead of requiring you to learn a whole other interface as a part of your disaster, your playbook is one phone number. You call into our support line. Actually, we have a cloud line. You'll call in, say, I need to declare a disaster. We verify it's you, and we begin the failover process. We've got VPN access. We've got public IP, whatever you might need to utilize. We're going to be able to provide that. You then fail over and utilize our environment, and from there you can then fail over, use us as long as you need. We're still running backups, and when you're ready to fail back, we can seed and ship you the deltas that you can then utilize in your own site. Not to mention, we've helped customers do this multiple times. We even have a story on our website about a customer that used us during the most recent hurricane down in Florida, and was able to successfully have everything ready to go should a disaster strike.
Very nice. Very nice. What about compatibility for Unix and Linux data protection. This person is asking about Unix, AIX, HPUX, Solaris, and you guys support a bunch of different clients.
That's actually all the ones you just named are supported. We have one of the biggest compatibility matrices in the industry. We've got Windows, Linux, Unix, HPUX, SCO, SGI, iSeries. The list goes on of things that we can actually help cover and protect. So there is a lot of them that we're actually able to do and cover as needed.
Excellent. Let's see, another question here is, how does the licensing work with the software versus the appliances?
Yeah, so the physical appliance is an all-in-one appliance where we provide the storage, server, and software, and you just put as much as you can fit on there. In terms of the software, that's based on what you're actually trying to protect. So it's per server or per socket. So basically whatever you're trying to shove in there, and the number, it's kind of a quantity based. So you just number those up, and that's how we figure out the protection that you would need.
Okay. And this person says, we have data compliance requirements. Where are your data centers located, and can we choose where our data sits?
Kind of. All the data, we have multiple ones throughout the United States, and we kind of disperse the data and balance the load. So it's not just one specifically, but we have multiple throughout the United States. I think something like over 4, maybe even over 6. And the data is distributed, so not only do you have your site, your local site, not only do you replicate to our site, but then we will then send that to at least 1 to 2 other locations, so that no matter what happens, you will have access to your data. Even if you lose a site and we lose a site, you still won't lose your data because we're that covered by all those things that we can provide.
Okay, cool. What about compliance? They're asking here if you support HIPAA compliance.
Yep, we have a bunch of customers that use us to achieve their HIPAA compliance. We've even helped with Sarbanes-Oxley with our long-term retention solutions. So we've got a lot of options for making sure you can keep and recover data for whatever requirements you may have.
All right, and Simon here, he's asking, how do physical appliances stack up if you need more than one? Basically, like, what about the scalability? When you run out of space on one, do you buy a second one? Do you buy a bigger one?
Yeah, so you have a few options. One is you can upgrade the appliance. If you have a smaller appliance, you can upgrade for a bigger one, or you can attach multiple appliances together. You can manage them all from a single pane of glass where you can see what each of them are doing, what they're backing up, and you can adjust the targets, the recoveries, and all the jobs without having to log into multiple machines. So it's easier to manage your kind of working clusters to be able to utilize, and kind of adjust for whatever you want to be able to accomplish with it.
Got it. That's nice that they stack and that you can manage them from a single point.
Oh, yeah.
So very cool.
And no additional charge for that either. That's included in whatever appliances you add, and that can be physical or virtual appliances.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Another question here. What about verifying my backups? How can Unitrends ensure that backups work when I need to recover?
That's great, and that's actually one of the biggest things that we have. If you come over here, we actually have, kind of showing it off on the screen real quick, we can actually create what's called data copy access jobs that will tell you, I should start with this, your compliance with what you want to be able to accomplish. So here I can see my RTO and my RPO goals and what I'm actually doing. So I can see it takes me 7 minutes to recover when I say I want to recover in 4 hours. And the actual RPO is 11 hours when I say I don't want to lose more than 24 hours. All this is available right from within here, and the jobs are simply very easy to recover. And I can even see if there is an issue. I can actually view within my recovery assurance where the errors may have occurred. So I can kind of view the whole log of this process, like which application failed and what went wrong, is all viewable right from within the report. So we try to provide as much as possible to kind of giving you that assurance. And this is so many steps better than just a login screen. This is actually going in and testing the applications for you, so you know it's able to recover and work.
Very nice. And then I think the last question we have is, say I back up my Unitrends data into Unitrends Cloud. Is there any way that you can detect ransomware? And if so, how would I roll back the last backup?
Yeah, sure. So Unitrends has we have a ransomware detection feature where basically Unitrends can go in and analyze the backups to see if there's indications for ransomware, such as drastic change in change rates, or we will be rolling out entropy testing for 10.1 where you can actually run a malware scan against your backup so you no longer have to do that on your production machines. Stuff like that that kind of keep you current, keep you on your toes, and making sure that you're covering everything you need for your backup and recovery desires.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Jordan, great presentation again. I think that's all the time we have, but thanks for being on the Cloud Ecocast today.
My pleasure. Enjoy, everyone.
And if you'd like more information about Unitrends, there's a handout there on your console. You can click to download. Also, I want to remind you, I have that question on the screen. If you'd like to be one of the first to learn more about Unitrends, cloud backup, just click Sure on the screen. And I'll leave that up while I announce our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. That is going out to Alex K. from California. Alex from California. Congratulations to Alex. We've got 3 more Amazon $500 gift cards to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next presentation on today's Cloud Ecocast event. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Craig Lee. He is the Chief Systems Architect for Blue Medora. Are you there, Craig?
Hello. Hello, David.
Thanks for being. Hi, Craig. Yeah, thanks for being on.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, David.
Hi, Craig. Yeah, take it away.
Sure. So, so we'll go ahead and talk about some hybrid cloud monitoring strategy and some of the common issues that we currently address, and things that we may be seeing as the world kind of evolves to having both the hybrid cloud strategy of both on-prem and to be public cloud, but also between the various vendors, as Azure, AWS, Hyper-V, vSphere, whatever you're using to actually host those various clouds as well. So diving into our presentation today, we're going to be talking first about the hybrid cloud itself and really what are some of the best practices around that. So what that really means from an agility standpoint and really aligning those to business goals. We'll talk about some of the most common monitoring challenges that we'll be addressing. And then we'll go ahead and kind of workshop a bit with some of these challenge scenarios. So something that the customers are either currently dealing with today that we see in the field, or perhaps something that is going to be a little bit on the horizon as people start to migrate or start thinking about where their data actually lives. And ultimately, a Q&A, and definitely encourage any kind of audience participation there, because the better questions you ask, the more information we're able to deliver. So hybrid cloud monitoring strategy. When I think about this in general, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, why are we looking at the various clouds in the first place? Why hybrid cloud? And ultimately embrace those different business drivers and those new features, and really within that, address those as being the priority of what we're trying to monitor and what we're trying to get get a handle on from a metrics perspective. So what does it actually mean in practice? So first off, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the actual cloud offerings and what they offer from a business perspective. The first off being agility. And agility is one of the great advantages that you gain within the hybrid cloud realm. And when I mean agility, I mean you're able to move quickly with the business itself. And now is some of the best times in IT from a agility perspective, because we are able to move very quickly. And the other aspect of this too, that I'm not sure if a lot of folks are really aware of as much, is that there's almost a minimal cost in failure now. So it used to be where we used to have to buy hundreds and thousands of dollars of storage arrays and software licensing and compute hardware and everything else to spin up perhaps a new line of business or a new database, and then tear all of that down if that wasn't operational. But now things are really available at the swipe of a credit card, so we can be a little bit more adventurous with our various endeavors. We can try new things out with just a swipe of a credit card and tear it down a couple months later if the business decides to go in a different direction. So that definitely presents a new challenge from a monitoring perspective. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's definitely a very exciting time when we're talking about this. The same is true also from a capacity perspective, where things are more elastic than they have ever been. And that's also great too, where you could have something on-prem, perhaps it's within your physical data center, but you need to get more capacity because it's big data and you're processing a large data set. Or perhaps you need to span and really address global availability. You can do that now. It's just the swipe of a credit card away. And with that, we need to make sure that everything is monitored and operating properly. And finally, too, another one of the great benefits we see within the hybrid cloud is the move from CapEx to OpEx. So before, within the capital expenditure world, things had to be planned out and really paid for years at a time. Now, again, things are the swipe of a credit card away, where everything is really burstable, and it's great. It's a very dynamic time. It's an exciting time to be in IT, but there's also some brand new challenges there. One of the biggest things are you definitely don't want tool sprawl. So every single one of these new technologies that you interface with and gain advantages from usually has a native tool set, perhaps, or perhaps it's something that you need to get a handle on from an availability perspective. So you need really to have your monitoring also move with whatever your solution is in terms of the line of business itself. So that's why we have our list of musts here. So this is kind of a high-level set of best practices. First off, centralized management. So what we mean when we say that is really having one tool, one suite of tools that you standardize on. With Blumidora, we do a lot of extensions around VMware's vRealize operations, which is a great tool set to bring everything together on, but that's really definitely key here. Troubleshooting smarter really allows you to do that from a single tool set where you're trying to bring everything together. So you're bringing together things from metrics and from logs to really gain insight into where those issues are. Now you have many different levels of connected systems. Automate everything wherever possible. That's definitely very useful for something in the VMware realm. We're talking about DRS, perhaps VRO, VRA. But even it's something as simple as adopting Chef or Puppet, and really to try to integrate a lot of that tool set together. The big piece of this too, we talked about AppEx versus CapEx a little bit earlier, but also trying to optimize cost and then also tying that back to the business unit, because now things are a lot more dynamic as they're moving around, but really understanding what that true cost is to your organization. Something else too with cost is addressing shadow IT, where perhaps a department or goes and purchases their own resources outside of the realm of what is known to IT generally, and you really need to understand what your company is spending as a whole overall. Correlate operational and cost insights. So again, it's bringing that cost into this, but it's also looking at what that is actually giving you and really understanding from a budgeting perspective. And this one's also interesting, where because things are very agile now and capacity can grow, you also need to understand where that's really growing to and where that can grow, from a maximums perspective, and really understanding what that is, because it's great that you can scale up, but someone has to pay for it, right? So it's great to get a handle on that as well. And this is the big one too, is comparing cost of your deployed workloads. So you may have your workloads living on AWS or Azure or VMware vSphere or something along those lines, but every single one of those places where your data can live now, and perhaps it spans multiple locations, has a cost associated with it. There's definitely advantages and disadvantages from every single cloud and every single approach. So really understanding what that is great. And if you can bring dollars to it, or perhaps performance impact, or some kind of measurable difference between those clouds, that will really help guide your decision-making processes and your strategy as you're able to move forward, especially within this hybrid cloud realm. So let's go ahead and talk through some various challenge scenarios and kind of work through what this means in practice. So a challenge that we see is really understanding your hybrid cloud migration. And this is a very common scenario you hear again and again. Usually it's people that are coming from a heavily virtualized on-prem where they have a single site, or maybe it's multiple sites. And now because of these new technologies, how do we integrate that in with our current business infrastructure, and really understanding that? So there's definitely some best practices that we need to address here as we're moving forward. So the first piece of this is really house cleaning. And talking to some colleagues of mine, they basically named 2017 as the year of house cleaning from an infrastructure perspective, where businesses are taking inventory in stock of what really is worth keeping and what needs to go, and what is important to you from an operational perspective, and what really can be migrated. So first off, take inventory of what you have within your environment and start to categorize the overall importance there. And then the second piece there is to categorize it. For example, which databases can move to Amazon RDS? That's the Amazon Relational Database Service. Are there web servers with external connectivity? Are there any regional considerations, perhaps? And that's also big from a DR, so that's disaster recovery or business continuity standpoint. But perhaps international business or moving your data to wherever your clients need access to it, and perhaps performance is also part of that. So first off, inventory everything, and then categorize and find what those workloads are that could be migrated, and what kind of workloads would actually see value to being moved to any kind of cloud hosting. So with this, capacity planning, definitely critical. So as you're going through this, make sure that you're doing capacity planning overall. That's why it's best to have a tool that can actually help you do this. As you see in the screenshot there, that happens to be vRealize Operations, but there are several tools and integrations that do this as well. And we're able to actually pull that in with several different management packs from the Blumidora perspective. And then so when you're doing that capacity planning, consolidation is very important. So within consolidation, you're able to bring a lot of your resources together and in fact reduce your overall computing footprint as part of this exercise. And that's definitely great from a optimization standpoint, but it's also good to just control cost. So I alluded to Blumidora and kind of what we do a little bit earlier within the presentation, but this is a look at all the different technologies that we offer connections to. So we happen to be developing connections to vRealize Operations now, where we develop several different management packs, and they can pull in data from the various verticals. So on the left-hand side, we can connect to several enterprise applications. If you kind of look through the right, you see databases, the virtualization platforms, network compute, and storage. And really what our strategy is here is to bring in all the different aspects of the infrastructure into one tool set within vRealize Operations. So it doesn't matter if you're running Dell EMC storage with Docker workloads and SAP HANA, or if it's Oracle with NetApp and so on. You can really switch out whatever those various technologies are, but you're still able to get visibility into those. And it's very important as we're going through all of this exercise of understanding what the hybrid cloud means and looking at the multiple cloud deployments. So that's what Blumidora is able to offer. So let's go ahead and take a look at a second challenge. So that's performance tuning in a multi-cloud environment. So it's great that we're able to move data around in between the various clouds, right? So that we've already kind of dealt with that challenge as we're talking about here. But we have to understand that our data, we really need to make sure that it's performance and it is available all the time. So if you look at the points, one truth prevails. It really doesn't matter where the application lives. IT is still going to be responsible for the overall capacity, the uptime, the performance, and the overall business impact. So really getting a tool that can understand your data wherever it lives is definitely important here. So these are some of the common questions we get, especially within the hybrid cloud migration scenario, is people will ask, why is it slow? They'll blame the migration right away. Did you even test it? Yeah, we definitely hear that if things are not going well. But if you're able to use things like some synthetic benchmarks, user session simulators, and good monitoring to understand that as you move the workloads around, there is no performance impact, or it's minimal, or that's somehow mitigated, you can definitely get a handle on this to understand where your performance is long term, no matter where your actual data lives. So with that, what are some of these key metrics that we are talking about? And that's a very common question we get, especially those that are kind of used to the on-prem model and they're maybe dipping the toes in the water with Azure or AWS or whatever those cloud vendors are. It's honestly the exact same metrics that we really care about today. So latency is a big one, CPU, network throughput, storage throughput, very, very important to the overall performance of your applications and your multiple application stacks. So really a lot of that same kind of methodologies that you would use for your on-prem could also be translated to any kind of public cloud hosting. So that's what I'm bringing up with my last point here, that they are still databases, they're just being hosted somewhere else. If we're talking about databases, for example, with an RDS. So really a lot of those best practices that you've learned currently can also be applied pretty much anywhere now, especially within that multi-cloud scenario. So how do we do this within vRealize operations today using Blue Medora? And that's where our pro tip is, where we call it our full stack. It's the cross-cloud visibility. We also kind of refer to this as our true visibility suite of products. And the reason why we keep hammering on that visibility paradigm is it's very important to bring together all the different components that make up your enterprise applications and to really view them side by side. So within that, within vRealize operations, you can create these high-level dashboards that can visualize all the different aspects that are important to your database and within your infrastructure. And with that, we try to bring in the native tool deep dive. So we're looking at things like noisy neighbors. We're trying to get all the way down through your storage layers, for example, or if there's anything that's using bandwidth potentially, or there are any costly queries that are running that are affecting performance. So really, it's about understanding not only one single aspect of your infrastructure that is being hosted within the cloud itself, but also all the different applications and pieces of infrastructure that are attached to it. So challenge number 3, we're going to talk about the SLAs and availability in a multi-cloud environment. So this is a bit unique. So before we talked about something that is a bit similar to what you've dealt with on-prem, or where perhaps the data center is hosted where you primarily have access to it. This is kind of interesting as we talk about moving between the various clouds and the various offerings today. So SLAs are very, very important because now we're starting to bring in multiple hosting vendors, be it Amazon, Microsoft, IBM Software, VMware vCloud. All of these organizations have various agreements to you, the actual customer, on the availability of your data. And now you have different levels of complexity between the different SLAs and all of the actual different connections. But now, to you as the actual IT professional, you have to kind of mitigate all these different SLAs working together, all these different clouds and availability working together. So that's kind of what our point here is that you have SLAs to the business units, and how do you keep your promises to the overall organization itself, and really understanding multi-vendor SLA management in a way. So with what Blue Medora offers is we can help monitor your data in AWS or Azure or vSphere and really look at that side by side. So you have almost a independent view, or a view that you control into the actual uptime itself, to really ensure that the SLAs are meeting your business requirements overall. An example of that is when Amazon Region East went down. How do you handle that kind of situation? Are you tracking things? Do you understand what the overall impact is to your organization? And really understanding what that means from a monitoring perspective and where all of those various database components live. So that brings us to pro tip number 3, where when you have outages, it's very important to map all of those relationships and understanding what the overall context is. So if you do have a component go offline, perhaps it's a load balancer, web server, whatever that is, understanding what that means is definitely important now, especially as your data is being spread all over the world and you have different global availability zones, for example, and really understanding what that means. And so we talked about it more on a global level from the hybrid cloud scenario, but perhaps we're also talking about the on-prem model as well, where if a single switch goes down, how does that impact your overall storage performance of your production database? And that's what a Blue Medora can also offer, is since we can monitor all the different various technologies, we can tell you what the latency is on a particular LUN and ultimately trace that to the actual virtual machine itself and to be able to pinpoint that. So that's definitely a best practice, be able to get relationships between all the different aspects. The other piece of this too that it's a bit related is the intelligent alerting. So really understanding where there are outages or dealing with any kind of issues that you have, understanding from the alerting perspective what that actually looks like and what the actual impact is definitely important here as well. So as you pull in things, for example, if you have a host that goes down, does that virtual machine then get migrated somewhere? And then if so, is it performing properly? How are things going from a performance perspective? And within Blue Medora, because we have such a variety of technologies that we're able to attach to, we can help provide context to those alerts and really make them actionable. So I'll go ahead and pause there. If there are any questions, I'd definitely like to talk about this further. But hopefully we went through a few common scenarios on the hybrid cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great presentation. Lots of good tips for hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategy. We do have quite a few questions here for you from the audience, so I'll just kick it off. I think the first one that catches my eye is there may be some confusion on exactly what Blue Medora sells or what product Blue Medora creates. So I know you talked about plugins for vRealize operations. Can you kind of give us an overview on what Blue Medora does?
Sure. So Blue Medora has been around for over a decade now, and really the whole time we've been specializing in enterprise IT monitoring integrations. So I know that sounds kind of like there's a lot to it, but really what we do primarily is we write monitoring integrations for about 50 technologies that are sold to extend vRealize operations. And within a lot of my screenshots and a lot of those best practices, I mentioned kind of how that actually operates and what kind of value we're able to provide there too. But we also extend other platforms as well. So for example, we have some product line within New Relic. We just announced a beta for the Wavefront platform, and so on. So yeah, really what we specialize in is bringing in all the different technologies into vRealize operations today, but we've also have been expanding that out to the multiple platforms as well.
Excellent. So these are plugins that we use in vRealize operations that can monitor and analyze all sorts of things, both on premises as well as up in the public cloud. Am I understanding that right?
Correct.
Okay. And so let's say that someone had VMware on site today and they were considering moving some of those workloads to the public cloud. Can you kind of give us some insight into what sort of plugins from Blue Medora would they use to help them with that analysis?
Yeah, that's an excellent scenario. So with that one, we've seen that very, very commonly with databases especially. So Blue Medora today creates a management pack for Microsoft SQL. I think you can even show you information down to the query level, so we can give you the top 10 worst performing queries based on I/O, for example. So we can tell you really what is going on from within your Microsoft SQL environment. If someone is looking to migrate that to Azure SQL, we can also do virtually that same level of monitoring where we can even go down to the query level within that as well if it's running on Azure within the Azure Microsoft SQL service. So that would be one I would definitely recommend. And that goes back to one of my challenges, which I had mentioned, is make sure when you're doing this, you run a lot of synthetic benchmarking, and then you're able to really kind of get an apples-to-apples comparison. And if you're using that Blue Medora tooling, you can really see what the response times are side by side.
Excellent. And a question here from George. He's asking, so this is software, not hardware, right? This is software you install into your existing vRealize operations installation.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And Benjamin's asking, is there a way to request or run a proof of concept? Like, are there trials or evaluations for these types of plugins?
Right. So if you reach out to bluemedora.com, you can go ahead and sign up for a trial today, and we can get you going. And what's really great is POCs and trials. I advise that anybody that really wants to see the value of this, go ahead and install it and really see what your own data looks like and see what kind of value you're able to get out of it.
Okay. Okay. Another question here is, can I use these tools for cost optimization?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting use case. And part of that is we could go back to the story around taking stock of your inventory. So looking at how things are connected and what they're being used on. So that could be one aspect, perhaps, of optimization. And also with our tools, because you can also look at within your infrastructure. So perhaps we're looking at the volumes on a SAN, for example. You can really see what is being used and what is not. So I think it's a great place when we start to have our whole cleanup process.
Okay. And for the audience out there, I want to call your attention to the question on the screen. I popped that poll question up. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about Blue Medora's multi-cloud monitoring solution? If so, just click sure. And then let's get back to some questions. We have a lot of questions rolling in. So Craig, another question that came in here is about licensing. Like, how does the licensing work on these different plugins? Do you just buy the plugin? Is it licensed per device that it analyzes, or how does that work?
Excellent question. So we actually license within a number of different ways. So we actually are on VMware's paper. VMware, you're actually able to buy it through VMware directly. And we have the exact same licensing model within vRealize Operations as what VMware offers today. So that is currently OSI, which is per basically VM monitored, or per CPU. So however you are licensing your vRealize Operations system, you can license a suite of Blue Medora products. And when I mentioned suite, we actually sell this within these bundles called the True Visibility Suites. So things we have things that start off within the infrastructure itself, such as the compute layer and storage, and that's called our standard, all the way up through enterprise applications, and that's called the enterprise bundle. But really what this will offer is any number of about 50 technologies that we attach to. As long as you are licensed for that True Visibility Suite, you have access to every single product within that suite itself. So it's kind of a mix and match based on whatever vendor you have, type of approach. We do sell these also direct to market via a la carte type options too. So perhaps you need to buy just a few licenses of a Nimble monitoring suite. We also offer that as well. But I think you can really get that visibility within our True Visibility Suites, and that's where the real value is.
Excellent. And then, so do you purchase that suite as an annual license with plus service and support, or how does that work?
Right. So it's the same way that everybody has been used to buying the VMware licenses. So you would purchase your TVS Suite base license and then add on support on a yearly basis or whatever that would be.
Got it. And then another question here came in. They're asking, how long does Blue Medora take to deploy and then provide some insight?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. This is kind of one of the things, too. I mentioned we've been doing this around monitoring integrations for over a decade now, and we really have our subject matter expertise around monitoring really fine-tuned around agentless collection. So when you install a Manager Pack within a VROps box, it takes just a few minutes to actually install itself. And then from there, you go ahead and configure it. And from the majority of our solutions, it's as simple as putting in a host name, username, password, hitting OK, and it starts collection right away. And all of our products have a test connection box. And then within a matter of minutes, it's just a few collections usually where you're starting to see all the different graphs populate. So you can usually go from having nothing installed to actually seeing value within your dashboards definitely within a half hour.
Very nice. Yeah, I've deployed many vRealize Operations management packs, and yeah, it's really easy. It's like adding an app on your iPhone. You download it, turn it on, and then point it to whatever it is that you want to monitor, and then the data starts showing up at vRealize Operations. So, yeah, very cool. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm at Amazon's reInvent conference today, and I know that Blue Medora has a booth here, and so I'm kind of curious. I'm going to ask my own question. I'm curious, what integrations do you have with AWS, or how do you relate to Amazon Web Services, to the cloud?
Yeah, that's actually a very big piece. So I think that vRealize Operations is one of the more interesting monitoring tools out there, but it's really great out of the box for just simple vSphere objects like ESXi, data storage, and so on. But that's really looking at it on-prem, and that's what Blue Medora does. Is because of our extensions, we're actually able to bring it into this hybrid cloud world where we have a manager pack focused on Amazon RDS and pulling in all the different information there. We have Amazon Aurora, and we have some new Amazon integrations coming. So I'll go ahead and get everybody excited for that. But what's also great about our RDS database monitoring functionality is if you have the existing manager pack that Blue Medora also makes for like Microsoft SQL, we can relate to get very deep information from that. And it doesn't matter if it lives in RDS or if that database lives on VMware, we can still make relationships all the way through, and it's the exact same product.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have for now, but really great, really insightful presentation. Thank you so much for being on today, Craig.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for more information, of course, check out bluemedora.com. Also download the Blue Medora handout there in your console on multi-cloud monitoring. And if you haven't answered the poll question on your screen now, I request or ask that you do that. It is, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about Blue Medora's multi-cloud monitoring? I'll leave that up while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card winner. That is going out to Tim H. from Texas. Congratulations to Tim H. from Texas. You're the next gift card winner. We've got 2 more Amazon $500 gift cards to give away on the Cloud Ecocast today. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and move on to our next presentation. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Carmelo McCutcheon. He is the Federal CTO for Cloudistics. Are you there, Carmelo?
Yes, I am. Very nice to meet you guys.
Great to have you on the event today. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you, everybody. I'm glad to get your time today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cloudistics. I don't know how many people have heard of us before, but we are an enterprise cloud converged architecture, which in layman's terms, we bring the cloud on-prem to your environment and give you the flexibility and ease of use that you'd expect from an Amazon or AWS within your data center. And what does that mean and why is that important? So when you think about what it means, right, as we've been watching, cloud has been trending up and applications have been transitioning to the cloud for the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years. But I would say the velocity of that is dynamically increasing ever so much every day. And the things we were used to from kind of what got us here to this point, the legacy environments, the EMC, Cisco's, and VMware's of the world, they've been on a steady declining pace over time, and they're kind of going away. And there's a new expectation in our world as, you know, providers of IT to our business units or companies that we work for, that it should be instant, that it should be easy, and that we shouldn't need the things that we used to use that were very complicated to get here. And that complexity has drove the opportunity for the cloud to be so prevalent. So coming back to why Cloudistics or what is Cloudistics, and I mentioned that we're an on-prem cloud. Right? We all know about converged infrastructure. That's what got us here and kind of started the revolution of the virtualized environment. And the things I remember the most are things like VCE, FlexPods with NetApp and Cisco, Dell solutions with EMC, vSpecs, whatever you want to call them, where I had the idea of incremental scale where I added resources when I needed to, but they were extremely hard and complex to support. And then we saw things like hyperconverged in 2012. And, you know, I have to hand it to Nutanix on this because they really changed our industry and drove simplicity, and they squeezed the middle. And what I mean by squeeze the middle is they took that storage problem, that SAN with replication and complication, and they eliminated it and they removed it from the conversation. And then other people followed suit, like SimpliVity and EMC. And they really gave customers, and very specifically a certain type of administrator in the customer, right, the virtual admin, the VMware administrator, they gave him a lot of control, and they made it extremely easy to use, which was amazing. And then from there, we saw public cloud that's been on the rise for a long time, kind of encroaching on this space, whether it was hyperconverged or converged. And now you look at where Cloudistics fits, and we bring that public cloud ease of use and simplicity, and very, quick to deploy, very automated in the deployment capabilities. We bring that within your data center for the applications that just don't fit in the cloud. because there are things that do belong in the cloud and there are things that don't. But for the things that don't belong in the cloud, people still want that experience. But those types of applications, and a perfect example would be like an enterprise data lake behind a Splunk or some Hadoop-based analytic that's using MapReduce. In those environments, storage, compute, network, they scale differently. So you need something that has incremental scale that you can turn that knob on. And we bring that to bear with that control, ease of use, and simple management that you expect if I had all three solutions in one thing within the data center. And that's what Cloudistics is, and that's what we bring to the table. So what does that mean? In our world, we have this concept of tenants, and we have a lot of different capabilities. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what started our company, which is our software-defined network capability, tightly coupled with our network virtualization capability. And we believe as a company, and we learned this from the cloud, that if you can't control the network, you can't control tenancy, and you can't enable an application-first space strategy. From there, we also created a software-defined storage capability that we've built. And the biggest difference between us and a lot of our competitors is that our software-defined storage capability protects your data with resiliency instead of replication. And what that really means is when I buy raw storage in the storage block that we would offer a customer, I get 70% of my storage as usable configured storage before deduping compression. When you look at software-defined storage capabilities, at best you get about 40 to 44% because they have to replicate your data and keep it 2 or 3 times before it becomes an effective usable data capability. So that's what really separates us with our software-defined storage capability. When you go from there, we have our hypervisor, which is KVM-based, and we've done a lot of work there to tightly couple our KVM hypervisor, which is our Spark hypervisor, to our software-defined network capability. We actually have kernel modules in both places to tightly couple the tool so you can get application-level network virtualization and mobility. And then that's all controlled and managed through our SaaS portal or our Ignite user interface. And you use that interface to quickly deploy pre-configured applications right out of our marketplace across all of our platforms that start with Blaze, which is our Enterprise Edition. Then they go to Flare, which is our SMB Robo Optimized Edition. And what that really means is we can go from the edge to the data center, and everything can be managed through this single pane of glass, which again is our Ignite user interface. Now, I've talked a lot about our platform, and I've learned, and through time, this is really important, that slides are not worth a lot without really seeing the product and putting your hands on it. So now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to give you guys a live demo of Ignite. So we have a virtual lab environment that I use all the time to show our customers what we do. So our customers go to a URL, and this URL is your gateway to the platform. Please understand the platform is still deployed within your data center, even though it's managed through a SaaS portal that lives in the cloud. And the idea is all your infrastructure calls home to the SaaS portal, but the SaaS portal is completely decoupled from the infrastructure, so your management pane is independent. You log into your management pane, and the first thing you see is your dashboard. So when I log into my dashboard, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing your screen. I want to make sure the audience can see what you're showing.
I forgot to hit the play button. Is it working now?
There we go. I see it. Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I am using a Mac, so that's probably my problem. But with that, when you log into our portal, we have a concept of zones. The first thing, think of a zone as a fence, right? I actually have the ability from a tenancy perspective in our world to create physical isolation of resources before I do logical separation of those resources. And that's directly represented here in our AOC prod zone or in our AOC DR zone. And you'll notice that I have a bunch of computers provisioned to the zone. Like if I click on the AOC prod zone, I can go to resources and connectivity, and I'll see that I provisioned 8 compute nodes from a compute block and made all those resources available that so I could logically provision those to a virtual data center. And a virtual data center here is just a virtual aggregation point of the resources. So when people use our capability, first you create your physical fence around the equipment that you want to allocate, And then you turn around and you create a virtual aggregation point, a virtual data center, and you provision the physical resources that you want to be allocated to that VDC. From a user perspective, if I'm deploying an application, I would go in here and I would say I want to create my VDC. And let's just say I call him Carmelo's demo. And I would turn around and pick the resources I want to allocate from the physical locations that I have provisioned hardware at. And the cool thing about having the SaaS portal in the cloud is that all your locations, all the places you as a customer would deploy our infrastructure, all call home to the SaaS portal. And they give you a single pane of glass to do multi-site management and deployment of your applications. So I would go in here and take resources from my AOC DR migration zone. So let's say I take 100 cores, and in my prod environment, I take 200 cores because it's production and I want better resources there. I give myself 200 gigs of RAM and 100 gig of RAM. I decide I want 2 terabytes on each side so I could replicate to each other. And I say create a virtual data center. I've now created a virtual aggregation point that I could deploy applications within. And then from there, I can use this virtual data center. And actually, let me go up here and click on it this way. And I can look at all the resources that I provisioned. I can even look at the past performance of those resources all the way back to a year. And right now I haven't provisioned an app yet, so I don't have a lot of data here to collect. But if I go to somewhere like this virtual data center where I've had a lot of apps running over time, you can see a lot of different points of your application that we monitor. And what I mean by that is I can show you, let's say I go back a month or 3 months. I can show you every aspect of utilization of your applications over that point in time. So then you guys can start trending performance, trending utilization, managing the resources you need more efficiently. And another cool thing about our capability as a platform is that when you create these virtual data centers, you can over-provision the resources. So when you see that you have underutilized assets like this, you can reclaim those resources just by creating new VDCs, making VDCs smaller, and you can drive up physical utilization of your assets. Because in our world, and kind of part of our vision as a company is we want to democratize that data center. And we want it to be just commodity things that you either add new, replace because of utilization or lifespan. You really shouldn't care anymore about the hardware. It's all done in software. And you'll also notice I haven't shown you anything about hardware. But in our platform, when you procure it from us, whether you get it as a service because it's going to be delivered in an O&M model for cloud consumption capabilities, or capital expenditure where people buy it for 3 years or buy it with 3 years of warranty or 5 years of warranty. The idea is you never actually manage that hardware. The management of the hardware or of the storage or of the compute is all done in software. And I'll actually go here and I'll show you this is the only tab we have on hardware. And the cool thing about this is because we control every piece that's in the solution, whether it's the switches, whether it's the compute blocks or the storage blocks, we know everything about it. And when you think about single pane of glass management, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I heard this story and this song and dance so many times it's not funny. But I came to this company because a peer of mine, Trinity, he really spent a lot of time and diligence as they built this product before I got here. And he created the utopia. In my world, I can connect to the console of a server right out of this UI. I can turn around and I can look at what the storage is doing. I can do the same thing. I can connect to the console of a storage array if I'm troubleshooting it. And you guys are like, yeah, I can do that with anything. Like if it's a Dell server, I can use OpenManage. I can do stuff like that. In our world, I can also go up here and I could say, I want to create a virtual network in that same UI. And I want to go and define it. I want to give it a name. I want to give it an address space. I want to decide how big that subnet's going to be. I'm going to tell it what default gateway I want it to have because our solution uses things like dynamic routing protocols, very specifically BGP. So when I go into this user interface, I don't need to log into switches and do show running config and do config T and all those things that we all know. I mean, I've been doing Cisco a long time. It's got me where I'm at today. But I don't have to do that anymore. I get to go to a web form and just decide what I want, decide what functions I want to use. So, What I mean by functions is we have some internal capabilities within our platform, like distributed firewalls, dynamic DNS, DHCP, that are considered network function virtualization points that we offer to our customers. Or I can bring in third parties like solutions from Palo Alto or Forescout, and I can go down here and just create a network. And using things like OpenFlow and CrossFlow and our proprietary capabilities, which is tied to AON, which is our adaptive overlay network capability. I talked about it a little bit. It's what does network virtualization. I can provision a network in a few seconds and just hit create and go. And I never have to log into a switch. I never have to go do MLACs. I never have to do VLAN trunking or tagging. And it will just go out there and do everything for me on my behalf as an administrator of a platform, same way I would in the cloud. And an example would be like when I use Microsoft Azure, because I use that today because we burst to Microsoft Azure. I go in there and I create a virtual network. I don't configure switches. I don't do anything like that. I just decide the subnet I want. I create it. I create VMs, and I put it on it. And that brings me to the next step. If you want to deploy an application in our world, you could go into our global marketplace that all of our customers have access to. And we have a lot of technology alliance partners like Splunk, Docker, Cloudera, IBM Big Insights, which is this data adapt template here. And as a customer, you can select which application you want, just like you would on your phone. So imagine I had my iPhone in my data center, and I said I need to download Splunk to ingest 10 terabytes of data. In our world, I can literally do that. I go here, I click download. I, call it, let's say Carmelo, just to give it a unique name, because we do these demos all the time as a group at my company for our customers or potential customers. And it downloads to a local template store, which resides on the storage capability you get with the platform when you bring it into your data center. And then you decide, I want to create a VM. And the coolest thing about creating a VM in our world is that when you go to create this VM, this is where you decide where you put it, where it's going to run, what type of resources you provision it. And from what I've seen, and being here for almost 2 years, and then before that, I've spent a lot of time in the VMware world and in the Hyper-V world, and it was never this easy. I give my VM a unique name. I decide what virtual data center that I've created based off of the resources I provision from whatever physical sites or multiple sites that I've deployed Cloudistics in, and we'll call it Carmelo's demo. If I want to group an application, so there's this concept that we've run into that's becoming more of a standard instead of a shiny snowflake, which is this concept of a multi-tiered app. And what that really means, and the perfect example of this meaning is SharePoint. It is an application that is formed through multiple components that run together to create the capability that your users will consume whatever it is you're providing them from. And SharePoint's an example where I may have a SQL server, multiple IIS servers, and it's a multi-tiered app. So I got IIS and I got SQL, but I want to group that and I want to manage that as one autonomous unit because that's how the rest of the business looks at that application, right? If I go to a business owner, he doesn't talk about IIS. He talks about a SharePoint library and how he puts data in there. In our world, we give you a way to manage those applications the way that the consumers of those applications think. So I could create a new application group. I could leverage an existing. I could say how many of an instance I want. I could decide where I want to consume storage from, so what site, what pool of storage. I can select that physical zone, which gives me a physical boundary and controls where I put that. I can decide to put it on a virtual network. I can select which virtual network I want. I can use some of our network function virtualization capabilities. So one of those would be a distributed firewall, and if I have any application-specific firewall rules, I can select those at the time that I create a VM. And then I can just hit create instance and go, and it'll go create my VM for me. And it'll log into the storage. It'll provision whatever block capability I need for that virtual disk that's tied to the VM. It'll talk to the hypervisor and pick the right one with the available resources that meet my memory and CPU requirements that I selected. And I can do all this within a click. And if you think about what that really means, and we all have smartphones today, right? Our infrastructure that's in your data center is your phone. Our marketplace is your app store, and you as a user are using our iTunes interface here to deploy your enterprise-wide applications quicker and simpler than you ever have in the past with on-prem infrastructure, but more akin to a cloud experience. And the other really cool thing is you're not worried about upgrading your infrastructure or managing those physical assets anymore, which is also akin to the cloud. And our goal And our belief and why we're here as a company is that just because you're in your own data center, it does not mean you need to compromise your user experience. And we're really here to make sure that you have that user experience that has become so popular from cloud providers within your data center for the apps that you've decided are either too important because of data locality, too important because of the performance requirements, or more persistent in nature, that you have the same experience. So you can manage these things the same way you would applications in the cloud. And that's kind of what our belief is as a company. I've shown you guys a lot about our product. And I'm curious, do you guys have any questions? And if we could go into the Q&A phase, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great presentation. Carmelo, I love to see the live demo. I love to see the product in action. We do have some questions for you here from the audience. So while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and pop up this poll question on the screen, unless you wanted to show something else in the interface.
No, I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we can move on to the questions.
Okay. So I've got on the screen right now a question. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Cloudistics on-premises enterprise cloud solution? I'm just going to leave that up there for everyone out there in the audience to answer while we do the Q&A. So the first question here that came in is just kind of some clarification on, so is Cloudistics hardware or software or both?
So that's a good question. So for our customers today, it is both. We tightly couple our software with Dell or other vendors' equipment from a hardware perspective to deliver the on-prem cloud capability. So it is both. Okay.
And Mike here, he's asking, if I deploy Cloudistics, like what shows up in the data center? Do I just plug it into my traditional network? Does it need storage? Does it have its own storage?
Oh, that's awesome. So there's only two things you need as a consumer of Cloudistics. We need a place to plug our stuff into within the rack that you rack it in. And then from there, because we provide the switches, the storage, and the compute, and all the software you need, we literally just need a place to take our switches and uplink them to within your environment so they can call home to our SaaS portal, but also access the rest of your network. So you will not need anything extra, and you will not need to use any legacy assets like old storage or reprovisioning or anything like that to enable our solution within your data center.
So it's compute, it's got storage, it's got networking. Just connect it to the network, give it some IP addresses and a password, and it's a fully deployed, software-defined data center ready to go. Is that kind of the gist of it?
You're spot on, man. And it's funny because now that you see it, but we actually, one of the bigger, I call them recommenders of solutions in the marketplace, IDC, they're actually quoted as saying we're the first people to ever deliver on that software-defined data center promise that other vendors have been talking about because of the way we've done it and the fact that you are getting everything, hardware and software included within your data center.
Okay. And Brett is asking, can a developer configure their own machines with a software stack for themselves within the constraints set by the IT admin?
Yeah. So the coolest thing about our platform is if I'm a developer and I need resources, I go to the IT admin and I say, I need resources. And in the normal world, you have to go figure out what those are. You may have to buy them, all that good stuff. In our world, he gets a virtual data center, and he says, I need X number of core, X number of memory, and whatever storage capacity he needs, and he creates his apps and he goes. And it's as easy as I did in the demo, right? Either that developer can do it if he has the right rights within the platform, or the IT administrator can do it on his behalf. But once he gets his virtual data center, he can do whatever he needs to, and he doesn't need help, and he doesn't have to wait for people to provision stuff on his behalf, which takes weeks, if not months, depending on the environment you're in. It's very instantaneous and easy.
Very nice. And then another question here is about, can I run containers on Cloudistics?
Oh, wow. I haven't had that question in a while. So it's really cool. I've been with Cloudistics for about 2 years, and one of the first integration points we did with a third-party piece of software was Docker. And we were the first people from an infrastructure perspective within the data center to create a persistent storage driver. And because we did that almost 2 years ago, you can run containers on our platform, and you can use tools like Kubernetes or Swarm to move those containers around within our platform but also to move those from our platform to other places like Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, or Amazon. So we totally support containers. We support orchestration of containers, and then we support movement of containers between our platform and others.
Okay. And another question, is there anything in Cloudistics to help with compliance?
Oh, that's a really good question too. So there's a couple of things. We have two different editions of our solution. The first edition is based off of CentOS, and that solution carries things like OpenScape, hardening requirements at the operating system level. We do pin testing and things of that nature to our entire solution. We support things like syslogs, so you can validate all the things that we've done and of the applications you run. And then we also have a Guardian edition of our product that's powered by Red Hat that includes the extra things you want when you're in a compliancy mode, like common criteria, which is a prerequisite for HIPAA, PCI, and also FIDC type regulations. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is we have two different flavors of our ice cream, and depending on what regulation you're complying to, you would just select from the menu of what you want, and you'd get everything you need. And then we support third-party audit through syslogs, so then you can validate and get forensical evidence on the controls that we implement in our solution.
Okay. And Tim, I'm hearing some background noise. Could you mute? I'm sorry. And Carmelo, another question here is about use cases. Like, what are some of the use cases you're seeing Cloudistics, give companies, a lot of benefit in their data center?
Good question. The first one I'll talk about is log analytics. We've partnered with a lot of SIMs like Splunk, Logarithm, and others, and they use our platform to create an automated cloud-like experience to ingest logs and analyze them, because we have optimizations in the network and also in the storage stack to enable performance that most people can't achieve unless they do bare metal. But they don't want the headache of managing the bare metal environment. They want the ease of use of a cloud. That's the first area. The second area has been Microsoft workloads, and very specifically VDI. We support a VDI solution that is Microsoft enabled directly. We don't have to use third-party capabilities like Citrix or VMware View. And that's another big use case that's become very popular for us, because in our world, every VDI session can be a persistent session, which means you can log what happens in the session, but also means that the user of that session, the VDI consumer, gets a personal experience where they get admin rights, which is the utopia of VDI, but you don't have to sacrifice cost of performance to enable that capability. So VDI is another one. The third one are like big data applications, so things that are Hadoop-based or Spark-based, those large analytical applications, because we're an all-flash storage capability. Our hypervisor is KVM. We utilize Broadwell and Skylake CPUs, and we're very dense. And an example of density would be in 6U, I can get up to 224, Broadwell or Skylake cores. I can get almost 8 terabytes of memory. I could get a petabyte of flash. And in that environment in 6U, I could run 500 or 600 VMs that power a distributed application. So think like big data, data science-like workloads. And then there's your general purpose workloads. Like I want to do a LAMP stack, or I need to run NoSQL, or, I have SharePoint, or I have an IaaS environment I'm deploying. So there are a lot of things you can do on us. Initially, as a platform, we focused on the harder, more complicated applications because we could use our SaaS portal and our automation capabilities to simplify those. And then when we did that, we started adding all the other things you need to run general purpose workloads. And now we can run just about anything, but those are some of the big use cases that we've had a lot of popularity and repeatability with so far in the marketplace.
Okay. And a question came in here. So is Cloudistics only or best used for greenfield deployment? And I would say no, because you all could say someone had an aging virtual infrastructure with an aging SAN. Their end user license agreement with VMware is up for renewal. They're going to have to spend a lot of money. So Cloudistics could essentially do all of that in one package.
Yes, you can. And it's funny, you just answered my question for me. And the coolest thing about that is we have a little import button in the UI. I wish I would have shown it now, where you can actually point us at the existing virtual environment, and if it's a data store that's hosted via NFS, will actually scan it for you, identify the VMs you want, and import them on your behalf.
Oh, very nice. I did not know that, actually.
As possible.
Yeah, and that was one of my follow-up questions, is the migration process. So that's very cool. And so I guess the last question we have time for is, for people who are interested and they like what they see with Cloudistics, what's the next step for them? What do you recommend they do?
I'd say visit our website. You can actually request a live demo right off of our website. You could email sales@cloudistics.com, and someone from the sales force will reach out to you immediately. And we could get your local account representative out to you, and we can give you a live demo. We could schedule time in our virtual lab environments where you could take it for a spin without having to bring eval equipment into your environment. And that would be a great place to start.
Excellent. And I put your contact information up there on the screen if anyone wants to contact you with further questions. Thanks so much for being on today, Carmelo. Great presentation.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I hope you guys have a good day.
Excellent. For more information, visit cloudistics.com. Check out the resource there on your console, available for download. And at this point, I'd like to give away our third Amazon $500 gift card. That is going out to Samantha C. from Arizona. Congratulations, Samantha. You won an Amazon $500 gift card. We've got another $500 gift card to give away after our next and final presentation. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Tushar Agrawal. He's a Director of Product Management at Datrium. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Hey, everyone. Great to be here with you all. I'm also joined by Mike McLaughlin, who is our Director of Tech Marketing. Mike, you want to say something real quick?
Hello. I'll be joining you a little bit later.
Awesome. So let's get started, guys. I know you've been kind of through a few presentations. What I wanted to do is the focus of this presentation is really on our brand new product, which we call Cloud DVX. Before we kind of get to that, I want to kind of start by introducing the company a little bit for you guys. This Datrium was founded in 2012 by the founders and CTO of Data Domain. And, some of you who have been following the industry for, the last 10 years would know that Data Domain was a great solution for, they kind of commercialized the first inline deduplication technology predominantly for backup purposes. In addition to that, a couple of our founders were also the first few engineers for Diane Green at VMware. So we've had a very good foundational, understanding of data efficiency as well as, primary workloads running in a virtualized environment. We're very well funded, about 110 million, 55 of which were raised last year. So, good sort of ability to kind of continue performing and innovating. And we've seen a tremendous adoption out there in the market with hundreds of deployments, kind of contrasted with some of the competitors that were same stage startups. We are kind of way ahead of them. So what is Datrium focused on? Datrium's mission is to make infrastructure effortless. And what we've been focused on since the very beginning of our product, and I kind of take you through that real quick before we jump into the Cloud DVX pieces, is to really simplify and converge compute, primary storage, and secondary storage into a couple of very simple building blocks. And we'll kind of get into that. What we just announced and what we are now focused on is to obviously continue to extend that convergence on the first three pillars, but also include cloud as the fourth big pillar of what Datrium intends to simplify, converge, and make effortless for our customers and IT administrators. So our key value proposition, if you kind of take away something from this presentation real quick, is Datrium has an architecture that's simpler than hyperconverged, and that's interesting because hyperconverged is currently known as the simplest. We do claim that we are simpler than them, and that's kind of what we hear back from our customers. We are faster than all-flash arrays, and we eliminate our customers' requirement to have separate backup silos in their infrastructure. So how do we do that? So let's look at DVX. So DVX is based on a foundational architecture that's different than anything that exists out there so far. And the way it's different is if you kind of think about a storage array, you have a fixed amount of controller capability that you get, and you have some amount of capacity that you get. What Datrium has done, if you kind of think of an analogy here, Datrium has taken the controller power out of the controller array and moved it onto the compute nodes. And so in our architecture, you have two forms of nodes. You have compute nodes and you have data nodes. And compute node is where all of the I/O processing is occurring. So in a way, this is server-powered infrastructure. You can use Datrium supplied compute nodes, or you can buy your own compute nodes. You can use your existing compute nodes. We work with every vendor, any technology, blade, 1 socket, 2 socket, 4 socket. You don't have to rip and replace it at all. But what we have also done, and this is where we are different than hyperconverged, is we have not made compute nodes stateful. Compute nodes in the Datrium architecture are only providing the CPU utilization and local flash for I/O processing, but all durable data lives on what we call the data nodes. And the data nodes are like arrays, but very, very minimally powered, because their sole responsibility is to keep an authoritative copy of the data in case it's required for a variety of reasons. So you kind of have a split architecture with Datrium. Compute node stays stateless, data node holds all the data, performs the global deduplication, and you have the ability to now scale these building blocks incrementally independent of each other. So you don't have the lockstep scaling and the lock-in that you normally see with hyperconverged infrastructure. In addition to that, what we've also done is we have, because of our data domain heritage, we have built in always-on deduplication, compression, and inline erasure coding into the product. And what this allows you to do is to get tremendous amount of efficiency from your data reduction perspective compared to hyperconverged infrastructures where you have, FTT equals 2 or, 3 copies or 2 copies of data. Everything in the Datrium system is erasure coded. There are no checkboxes. And, what we think is if you have a checkbox, it probably does not work very well. So in our system, you have always on deduplication, compression, inline erasure coding. Now, on top of that, what you also get is a phenomenally granular and powerful data protection and data management capability. So our goal is to simplify private cloud with this part of the story to a degree where customers can simply, consume that infrastructure and deploy applications and not worry about managing it, not worry about protecting it, not worry about getting performance out of it. All IOs in the Datrium architecture are served from local flash from a read perspective. So all reads are local, which is also why we claim much higher performance than all flash arrays, because all reads are only incurring local flash latencies, and that flash can be NVMe, can be SATA, can be any flash that you can buy from your commodity vendor. Data management, snapshots, clones, replications, restores, everything can be done at a VM granularity for sure, but can also be done at sub-VM granularity, which means you can actually take a vdisk and clone it. You can snapshot a vdisk. You can replicate a vdisk. You can also do that on persistent container volumes. And so you get absolute flexibility. Everything has been designed to be super efficient. So when you do these operations, you don't really incur any performance penalty. Our encryption is unique in the industry. We encrypt data in flight and at rest between the compute nodes and the data nodes with all of the data reduction intact. The way you kind of do this is we fingerprint the blocks and compress them before we encrypt them. And then at that point, we use the fingerprints to ensure that we can kind of take care of the data reduction, and data between the host and the data node on the network is encrypted in flight as well as at rest without the need for any self-encrypting drives, without the need for any software license key manager. Key Manager comes built in. Now, on top of that, for a lot of our customers, a big value proposition for our product is the ability to scale the product in very, very fine increments. So you can start with a single compute node and a single data node. A single data node provides about 100 terabytes of effective capacity. Can be disk, can be flash, up to the customer. You can scale that system all the way to 128 compute nodes and 10 data nodes in a single DVX system. And these compute nodes can be a mix of different hypervisors. So it can be a vSphere node, it can be a KVM, it can be a Red Hat virtualization host, or it can be a Linux host running bare metal containers, all of which can now be consolidated all the way from dev to prod within the same system. This is kind of a list of our customers. I kind of talked about 100 plus customers within less than 2 years of being out there in the market, including some Fortune 100 customers. The one comment I receive from our customers all the time is, they don't have to think about their infrastructure anymore. So they get performance, they get data efficiencies, and a lot of them are really looking to consolidate a lot of their infrastructure, primary, secondary, cloud backup, all on Datrium. So at this point, let's kind of switch gears and talk about what Datrium is doing in the cloud space. And so the first offering we have is really a backup and restore from cloud. And let me kind of explain why that's useful. One of the things I think everybody would agree is public cloud is becoming a new backup and archival target. Right? You've had for a long time the disk to tape model, where you had a primary storage, secondary storage, and then a gateway device that could send data to the tape. Tape for a very, for a variety of reasons, being hard to manage, the long restore times, the ability to kind of the complexity of managing multiple tape systems across a geographically distributed environment is all complex, and cloud allows customers the ability to consolidate all of that long-term retention data in a single place, makes it, pay as you go, so you don't have to do a CapEx investments upfront, prevents and avoids all of the media management, and really makes data accessible instantly, right? So cloud is definitely a very strong use case for backup and archival. But if you look at existing offerings, cloud is still pretty hard. And why do I say that? I say that because in most cases, 95% of solutions require customers to buy a separate device. And when I say a separate device, it could be a backup system. The backup system in this case is required to send data from the primary system all the way to the cloud. And so what it means for customers is that they need to now essentially manage not only a primary storage system, but also a secondary storage system. And then in many cases, the solutions require customers to meddle in the cloud. What that means is that, they have to learn another system, which is in the cloud for EC2 instances, S3. How do I optimize all of that? It's still pretty complex. Cost is a big factor there as well, predominantly because everything that you do in the cloud is charged, right? And so it becomes super important that even your operations, which are your puts and gets in S3, the instances that you use, it's a whole new game. And many enterprise customers have not really, prepared themselves to kind of deal with this added set of complexity in a hybrid cloud scenario. So cost is a problem. Existing approaches don't really have great data reduction abilities in the cloud, which kind of complicates this further, and we can get into that in just a second. And then RTO is slow, predominantly because of the multi-hop that the data has to travel from a cloud to the backup system, and then from a backup system with full hydration to the primary system. And these multiple tiers make it really difficult for customers to get an RTO that helps them kind of make cloud work for their backup use cases. So how is Datrium different? So what Datrium has done, and if you kind of reflect back on my earlier comments about the architecture, Datrium architecture resembles a cloud architecture in a very, very similar way. And what you see here is you have EC2 instances where you run all of the IO processing, and you have the S3 buckets, which is very similar to what we have on compute nodes and data node side, which allow us to port our entire software stack to the cloud, so that we can enable customers to get the same level of always-on data efficiencies, forever incremental transfers from on-prem to the public cloud, and do that in a manner where customers get as-a-service simplicity, they get a much lower TCO, and they get a much faster RTO because you're really only sending data between the sites that's not already available on the other site. So Datrium Cloud DVX is the first use case we support with Cloud DVX is backup and recovery. But since this is the full port of our software in the cloud, very soon we'll augment that ability to also have copy data management in the cloud where you can instantiate and ultimately culminate with the ability to perform a full-fledged DR to the cloud in a very, very efficient manner. So let's look at each of these and see why Datrium claims that it's simpler, it's more cost-effective, and it's faster RTO than alternatives. If we kind of look at simplicity, in case of the Datrium solution, all that you need to do as a customer is create an AWS account, enter the credentials in the Datrium GUI, and that's it. Everything else, which is spinning up the resources in the cloud, maintaining those resources and keeping them available. I mean, AWS is notorious for EC2 instances, disappearing. We kind of take care of that. Upgrading the software in the cloud, that we take care of that, so you don't have to worry about it. And then proactive support of resources running for Cloud DVX in the cloud, just like we have a phenomenal ability on telemetry for call home. On the on-prem side, we have a phenomenal similar ability to kind of call home from the public cloud, which means customers really don't have to worry about it. Secondly, there is no backup silo required on-prem. So this is basically your primary system going straight to the cloud, and you kind of eliminate a lot of complexity, a lot of extra, product space, power, cooling, human resources that you would have needed otherwise if you had this, three-tier architecture that has been common for a long time. Now, TCO. So this is a comparison for Datrium versus the leading HCI and the leading HCI backup vendors. HCI, in this case, uses a compute instance in the cloud and writes data to the S3. HCI backup in this use case is writing directly to S3. So there are two approaches. Datrium takes the approach of running an EC2 instance and writing data to S3. Now, you may wonder, hey, what about my EC2 costs, right? What we find is if you have in-cloud deduplication, and what I mean by that is you're able to deduplicate data that you're getting from multiple sites into that cloud instance, your overall cost are much, much lower. And that EC2 instance, which is able to provide you with this ability to globally dedupe data, ends up saving you a lot of money in the long run. And so essentially, Datrium can perform deduplication in the cloud, and it's forever incremental compared to some of the leading HCI vendors which don't provide in-cloud deduplication, meaning that their AWS costs are way higher, and some HCI backup vendors will actually write directly to S3, and it's super hard, if at all possible, if you're writing directly to S3 and you don't have an instance running there to deduplicate data, because you then need to read that data across these different sites, and every data egress request would be costly. So in addition to that, HCI backup vendor require you to send pulls every 3 to 6 times a month, which really kills the economics of using cloud as the backup system, because pulls plus the absence of a global deduplication means that you're consuming a lot of S3, and if you're consuming a lot of S3, that's kind of the bulk of the costs. So 3x, lesser cost than hyperconverged, 11x lesser cost, and it keeps getting better because the more data you send, the more the data reduction is going to be. Let's talk about RTO. So it's just kind of pretty simple. Again, we only need to retrieve data that's not already on your on-prem site. So it's deduplication aware. It's also super granular. Now, one of the features that is also useful in this case is in-guest file level restores, and that's something which we should get in the next couple of quarters. But even today, with VM level and vdisk level restores, what our customers tell us is that they click a button, and in the time it takes for them to go and check the replication bandwidth on our performance monitors, it's already done. And so it's very efficient because of the deduplication compression and granularity, and the fact that data is going from cloud straight to a system where you can instantiate in production on primary. The RTOs are significantly lower than alternatives. Use cases, we've been kind of talking to a lot of customers about it. There's a tremendous amount of interest. There are two main use cases that customers look at with regards to this product. One is they want to use cloud as the second site. In this case, they want to use cloud as a second site for keeping their long-term data retention. In fact, a lot of their data retention for snapshots, and they want to eliminate the cost and the complexity that they incur with having a second data center. That's one use case. The second use case that we see is where the customers want to use the cloud for compliance reasons for long-term data retention. And in this case, they want to use this as the third copy. So they have a primary system, they have a DR site, and then they have the ability to then send data from the DR site all the way into cloud. Each of these sites can have different retention periods, which means that you can really be very flexible and powerful in terms of determining which data you want to keep where for how long. And obviously, the long-term compliance use case is a great way for customers to move away from tapes, which are complex, into something which helps them consolidate the data and manage it very, very efficiently. So we've been kind of in beta so far. We announced this product actually yesterday, and we've had some phenomenal reactions. University of Maryland is one of our beta customers, and they are in the bucket where they want to use AWS and this feature as the second site. And it was super interesting because, their university had an account, but they themselves, this department, had not yet started to use Amazon. With the simplicity that we offer to these customers, they're kind of now taking the step towards going to the cloud because, since we're managing everything for them, they can just consume cloud and they don't need to invest in the second site and spend all that money and incur all that complexity. So that's one use case. Intuition is a financial, in this financial space. And this company is looking at Datrium Cloud DVX as the long-term retention tape replacement. They have a really interesting use case. I'll highly encourage you to look at our website and look at some of the press releases that we just issued yesterday. They're in the Florida region. They suffered Irma, which was the hurricane, and they use Iron Mountain, and they had a huge amount of problems because of flooding to retrieve tapes from Iron Mountain because the trucks couldn't just get to the data center. And their point of view now is, hey, if I had cloud, if I had network connectivity restored, I could get that data and I could not be down. I don't have to wait for our physical tapes to be shipped to my site. So very interesting reactions, very interesting, and we're super pumped up with the ability of this feature. So enough of slides. I thought it's a good time to now segue with Mike here with us to kind of show you how this looks and feels, and it's so simple. So Mike, take it away from here.
Okay. Thanks, Tushar. So I have a couple of recorded demos of our environment that we use. We're going to go through a couple of things fairly quickly. If we cover something that you want more information, feel free to reach out to us. I'd be more than happy to do a deeper dive on this because we're going to touch on a couple of key things here. I have three short sort of demos here that we're going to walk through with respect to setting up a data cloud, what you can do within that, and then also how you would act on that data afterwards. And so let's let this first one run here, and then we're going to pause in between and kind of tie this back to some of the things that Tushar just said. So, all right. So this first one here basically is showing how to connect two DVX systems, whether they are on-prem, as we see here, we're connecting DVX32 to DVX47. These are two DVX systems that you own at different sites, and it's as simple as pointing them to each other to create essentially a replication relationship. All right, and in this, it literally is that simple. Point to it, give me the login password, and I can set up part of my topology. Now, what we've introduced this week is the ability to also replicate to the AWS cloud. Now, this one's a little bit different. You're going to need your own AWS credentials to get to that location, and we'll basically set up another site destination, just as simple as we did for our own DVX. By putting in the proper credentials, you'll see the little gear here spin a little bit. We're essentially building a DVX on that site for you now to use as a target for data that you might want to move off of an on-prem DVX. So as you're setting up basically replication site, it really is that simple to essentially point to the right location, give us the credentials, and we'll set up the topology. Now, we're going to look at what we do with that in just a minute. There's a couple of things. If you already have 2 DVXs, you've got those set up. That's pretty straightforward. If you have the desire to replicate into the Amazon AWS S3 cloud, one, you're going to need to get an account there. A couple of steps. You're going to need to give us a call so we can push a couple of things into the background for all of that magic to happen with just a spinning wheel. But then we'll essentially set up a DVX as a service in AWS S3 for you to push data from your local site out to the cloud and back.
Yeah, that was great. So, Mike, let me just kind of really summarize that, right? So, all the customer had to do was create an AWS account, select the region, provide the credentials in the Datrium GUI, and click Go. And Datrium from that point takes on and spins up the EC2 instances, the S3, all of that resources that we need in the cloud so that they can start pushing data. So it's as simple. And at that point, you're ready to start pushing data into the cloud.
Okay, so now that we see how simple it is to set up the connectivity, let's see what we do with those data management facilities on the DVX. All right, so in this particular demo, we're going to drill into our protection tab, and this is where we basically take our snapshots and move the data around. And let me click. There we go. It's moving. All right. So on this particular site, we see a number of protection groups already defined that have accumulated snapshots. We can see the data used. We can see the names that they're applied to. Let's drill into one of those and see what it means. So a protection group gives us the ability to define what it is we want to move from one site to another. And that could be a collection of virtual machines. It could, which we could either name by wildcard, which is kind of convenient, and in this case, we actually have a star prod star. We can pick specific virtual machines, or we can pick basically anything that's on our DVX data store down to the file level. So that could be a data store file, a VMDK, an individual piece of a virtual machine. The protection group gives me this membership capability that's very flexible and very granular to define what we're going to move from one site to another. So as I'm looking at pushing things out to another DVX or to the Amazon cloud, I have selection criteria. I have scheduling here for those snapshots with retention period on my local site. And if I choose to replicate those, I can have different retentions at the other site too. So I can have multiple schedules, multiple retentions, and multiple sites identified for moving data in and out of my on-prem DVX. All right. We're going to flip over just for a minute and show the one in the Amazon as well, where we're replicating to AWS S3. Sometimes the name of the protection group is useful. This is one that we're basically going to clearly call out as pushing off to the AWS Cloud DVX. And again, here we can set different retention periods. So maybe I have a local retention of daily or hourly, and I want to push long-term, incremental forever type style backups off to the cloud. All right.
Super, super. The one thing that I want to really call out real quick is you kind of see that this interface in this instance of what Mike's showing you is completely integrated into vCenter. We have an HTML5 GUI that we use the vCenter plugin with. We also have the standalone GUI, and you kind of saw that, everything in that GUI is VM-centric. Everything is, sort of really from a perspective of VM-specific, vDisk-specific, and it gives you the protection group ability to kind of simply, instead of LUNs, how complex are LUNs, right? Use simple wildcard patterns to kind of get to the VM that you want to protect and replicate them off to wherever you want to replicate them to.
Okay, so for this last one, now that we've got the site set up, we've got data moving between our DVXs, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, what can we do with that data? And these are the sort of the back-end side of the data management functions. And Tushar talked a little bit about that, but we're going to kind of drill through that now with this last demo. So if we go back to our protection view, and let's drill into this one that we called application example, and we can see all of the snapshots that have been taken, all right? And these snapshots basically, we can see the time, the amount of data that they're consuming, and if I drill into one of these, we can actually see what it's collecting. And so this one happens to be picking up some worker VMs, and I can now choose to clone or restore or replicate that information from that particular protection group. In this case, I'm choosing to clone it. So I'm making a local on-site copy of an entire protection group. And if you notice, I gave it the little prod prefix. That's going to be important because we're going to pick that up in our protection group definition a little bit later. But I can essentially drill through here and see various things that I can do from a clone, restore, or replicate of the information that's on my local site. And, real quick here, we have 17 virtual machines, and if we see in the list here, all of these ones that I just cloned are now part of that gold protection group that I previewed just a little while ago. So by just cloning to the local site, we have new instances to protect as well. Now, one other feature that's added to the product now is since we're pushing things off to different sites, we may want to retrieve something back from one of those sites. All right, and so we have the ability now to see what's in the replication. So if we kind of look at this list here, we can see that some of these snapshots are on the local DVX and some of them are in the cloud DVX, as an example. And if we scroll down in this list a little bit further, we'll see that the local copies start to disappear. I'm not keeping as much locally as I need to, but what I can do now is essentially pull one of those back and retrieve it. All right, and by reaching out into my secondary copy, I can bring it back on site for some period of time. In this case, I'm going to bring it back for 24 hours. So that I think it's that 5 p.m. snapshot should now be not only in the cloud, but it'll be back on the local site for me to act on, whatever I want to do with it. The granularity that I have here, I can drill in to those protection groups and actually grab just a virtual machine or even just a VDISK with the same process of reaching into the remote copy and pulling it back. Now, this is dedupe aware at both sites and over the network, so this is highly efficient, all right? You think of this, I've already got many of the snapshots local, but not the one that I want, for example, all right? And we'll be able to see that that 5 p.m. one now will appear in my list of snapshots that are both local and in the cloud, and that one VM that I selected, and we'll get to that in just a second, is actually locally. It's in an ad hoc bucket of snapshot artifacts because it was pulled back independently. All right, so if we look in our ad hoc snapshots here, or ad hoc, we can see that SQL 5 instance that I pulled just the virtual machine out of. Now, these are now back on my local site, and I can choose to restore them, recover them, clone them, hand them off to somebody else. This is basically data cloud movement within the DVX systems.
Super, that was great. So I think just a quick couple of highlights. Yeah, essentially, what you saw is all of these operations, right? Clone, restore, replicate. They are fully dedupe and compress aware. We have a very efficient, metadata-based approach for any of these operations, so they don't really impact production. And what you also saw is the granularity of retrieves. I think what you may have also noticed is how quickly the retrieves occurred. I don't know if you were paying attention on the right side, each of these retrieves, whether it was a VM retrieve or sort of a whole protection group retrieve, occurred in less than a minute. And this is actually occurring from the cloud, and the secret behind this is, really the fact that we are comparing the data between on-prem and public cloud and saying, hey, I've already got most of it, just send me what I'm missing, and I'm done. And so that's kind of why your RTO in this case is, just basically the time it takes to transfer those unique blocks, and you then have the ability to spin those up on production without really any, adverse impacts on what you're already running on that environment. So with that, I think we can kind of go into questions. Over to you guys.
Yeah, Tushar and Mike, really great demo. Congratulations on the release of the new product. And my head is still kind of spinning. This is the first time I've gotten the chance to hear about this. So I have a lot of questions for you, and I know the audience does too. If you're out there in the audience and you have a question, now is the time. I'm going to go ahead and pop up this poll question on the screen while we answer those questions. That is, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about Datrium's new Cloud DVX solution? So I'll just leave that on the screen. And the first question I want to ask is, with Cloud DVX, I mean, I'm assuming I would be using Datrium's DVX locally as well. Is that true? I mean, I can't just use Cloud DVX by itself.
That is absolutely correct. And I think that is correct today. That is correct today because the current use case is for on-prem site to send data to Cloud DVX and retrieve it when they need it. But bear in mind, as I said earlier, the stack has been ported. And the stack has the ability to provide the same level of deduplication, compression, all of the technologies that we have on-prem. So you should kind of definitely keep, stay tuned, and we should have a lot more exciting news for you there.
Okay, cool. And another question that came in here from the audience is about what hypervisors does Datrium support today?
Super, great question. So we started out with supporting VMware vSphere, and we support everything from 5.5 onwards. We also have our vCenter plugin completely beautifully placed for the HTML5 version of the vCenter client. We also support CentOS, KVM running on CentOS. We support Red Hat virtualization packages running on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We support bare metal Docker containers that are running on CentOS OS. So you really have a fantastic choice, combined with the fact that we can support your existing servers. You can bring your own flash, and you can have 16 terabytes of flash in each host, which is pre-deduplication and compression. We don't need to protect the flash that's on the host because you have an authoritative copy of the data in the data node, which is dual controller based. So you really get a lot of effective flash, and what we find is that customers pretty much run their entire VM set on a host locally without any neighbor noise from the other nodes. So short answer, long answer, but we support VMware vSphere, KVM, and Red Hat.
Okay, and you mentioned existing servers. There's actually a question here in the queue from the audience asking about, is there some sort of hardware compatibility list for those servers?
Anything that's on the VMware compatibility list from the VMware side is good with us, and similarly for Red Hat virtualization. A lot of the compute servers, have a pretty broad support list for hypervisors and operating systems, and CentOS and RHEL and VMware vSphere are pretty common. Supported across pretty much all server vendors, all server models. And so, we kind of just rely on those. We actually can also, kind of recommend customers to use really intensive SATA. We have a phenomenal file system based on log structured file system where we, kind of make sure that all data that goes to the flash or the disk-based data node or the flash-based data node is, it's sort of sequential rather than random. And so we kind of sequentialize it before we write it to the backend. So you can use really cost-effective SSDs, servers, and great performance. I think I kind of missed that real quick summary. We can do up to 18 million read IOPS. Performance is 4x the fastest Extreme IO system. And that's kind of a testimony to the fact that, all reads are local from NVMe or local flash, and all writes are going to the NVRAM on the data node. So very performant and very flexible.
Yeah,
very nice. Go ahead.
So if anyone has questions, on our website, the compute node specifications are listed, both of the ones we sell and the third party that we support. So some more information is there.
Okay, excellent. And when it comes to use cases for Datrium, I mean, obviously some high-performance workloads would be a great use case considering you all offer such incredible performance. But just what about general, server virtualization, general compute type workloads? If someone has an aging SAN, they need to replace, is Datrium a good fit for that as well?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons why we are, I think we don't like to call ourselves HCI, and truly we are, kind of. I saw a question there by one of the gentlemen here. I like the term uber converged, right? We are definitely the next sort of call it an evolution of that architecture. The reason why we get great performance for tier 1 apps, a lot of our customers run Oracle on us, Oracle RAC supported on us. We have a phenomenal support for SQL Server with application consistent snapshots that do not depend on VMware. Snapshots, it's sort of, we have our own VSS provider, and so there are no VM stunts, there's no application performance slump. You kind of saw how quick and easy our snapshots are. So we are seeing a tremendous adoption with the workloads that people were really, frankly, afraid to put on hyperconvergence earlier. And hyperconvergence was kind of this VDI centric for a long time. Datrium, on the other hand, is coming in from an angle where we have great isolation of these hosts, so that you can get truly predictable performance. There's no east-west traffic. All traffic is between host and the data nodes, north-south. And so because of that, and because of local flash, because a tremendous amount of local flash capacity, you can really run truly, very, very data-intensive applications on top of Datrium.
Very nice. And back to the Cloud DVX solution, I'm trying to picture how it works exactly. So why don't you walk us through just the process? Say I have Datrium on site now. I'm interested in deploying Cloud DVX. How would that work in AWS?
Absolutely. So if you have an on-prem DVX, and let's say you don't have an AWS account, so the first step is for you to create an AWS account. That's pretty straightforward. Just go and create one, put your credit card. Once you do that, we require customers to essentially give us their account ID so we can push the Datrium Cloud DVX AMI into their, so that they can get that AMI, and we can kind of essentially use that AMI to spin up Cloud DVX EC2 instances. But from a customer perspective, once you give us the account ID and you generate the access keys that you have for that account, and we don't need those access keys. Those access keys are entered by the customer on their on-prem DVX GUI. And as soon as they enter that and they click OK, it's kind of what we saw in the demo. We use Amazon Lambda functions to essentially do the orchestration of spinning up resources like EC2, like S3, in the cloud automatically, such that we have a Cloud DVX with our AMI, with our EC2, with the S3 running in Cloud DVX. And at that point, we establish a pairing between the on-prem site and the Cloud DVX site. And at that point, as soon as you define a protection group and you specify a snapshot schedule, you can start replicating data to that Cloud DVX, which is then received in the Cloud DVX. So you have multiple sites. So you have 4 sites and you want to send data to the Cloud DVX. That data is received by the Cloud DVX from these 4 sites. And, we can deduplicate that data across all of these sites. So if you're getting 3x local, we kind of very conservatively estimate that you'll get at least 1.5x across that already deduplicated data, now being sort of deduplicated across multiple sites, multiple snapshots, multiple systems, and result into a lot of cost savings for our customers, because S3 and S3 operations, frankly, are the bulk of the cost, because this is long-term retention and you're really storing a lot of data in the cloud. So the more data you store, the more data protection you get, the better your economics is.
Very nice. And then if I have a disaster, say my local data center, something happens to it, I need to recover, are you saying that I use the Cloud DVX interface like you showed in the demo, and I can essentially just spin up those virtual machines as instances in Amazon?
So that's something that will be supported in future. This is kind of what I was alluding to from an instantiation perspective. That's not what we support today. So what we support today is you can retrieve, so you can kind of get that copy of data back into your on-prem, and you can instantiate it on-prem.
Okay, and so, or if I had another data center, I could recover it over there as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. And then what about the availability of Cloud DVX? Is it available today?
So Cloud DVX is going to be available within the next 60 days. We would highly, highly encourage you to check it out, reach out to us, Mike and I, or, just kind of go to our website, contact us. We would love to show you a demo. We would love to kind of give you access to a remote access, ability so that you can play with that environment. We're happy to do a POC and then kind of, show you exactly, how well it works with your, environment. And you can get going by the time it's out. So it's going to be available, in the next 60 days.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for today, but great presentation. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you, Mike.
Let me just answer one more thing. I'm sorry, I just saw a question here. Data encryption, real quick. So all data that is sent from on-prem to the cloud DVX is encrypted by Datrium. You don't need VPN, which is another thing that's charged by AWS by hour and by the gigabyte ingress as well as egress. You don't need VPN with Datrium. Or encryption, the way it works is we encrypt data on the host as soon as we receive it, and it stays encrypted from that point until it's received in the cloud DVX. And at that point, we use AWS envelope encryption to kind of encrypt it when it's put onto S3. So our data stays encrypted. You don't need VPN, which also ends up saving you a lot of money. Sorry about that. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, great clarification. And I mean, moving to public cloud, security, compliance are always a concern. So being able to encrypt all the data just built into Datrium is a huge benefit. So thank you for that. With that, yeah, thank you, Datrium, for being on. For more information, visit datrium.com. Check out the resource there in your console and contact them if you'd like to get a demo or perform a POC with Datrium. I've got that question still up on the screen. Would you like to be one of the first to learn more about Datrium's Cloud DVX? I'll leave that on the screen and announce our final prize winner on the Cloud Ecocast. We've got another Amazon $500 gift card going out to Court J from Utah. Congratulations, Court from Utah. We'll be reaching out to you to send out your gift card. And thank you, everyone. Best of luck on our next event. All right, and with that, we've reached the end of the Cloud Ecocast. Before we conclude, I want to point out, if you'd like to learn more and stay up to date on innovative enterprise technology, check out our podcast, the 10 on Tech podcast, where we interview some of today's most innovative technologists on the show, so you can subscribe on iTunes. And then finally, our next event from Actual Tech Media is next week, 1 week from today. It is the Enterprise Storage Megacast. You can register for that event over on events.actualtechmedia.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Cloud Ecocast. I hope you enjoyed the event. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.